Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Last week, as we were putting the show to bed, the news broke that Republicans in Florida were looking to join their colleagues in Texas and attempt to redraw congressional seats to take out several Democrats and help Republicans and President Donald Trump hold on to the House. Now, why is this such a big issue for Trump? Well, if Democrats win back the House, they will be able to hold hearings and create some level of accountability for the president. And it would likely bring his legislative agenda to a halt. No more big, beautiful bills. And look, traditionally, the party of the president usually loses seats in midterm elections. George W. Bush lost 30 seats during the 2006 midterms. During Obama's first term, Democrats lost 63 seats. Biden lost 9. And in Trump's first term, Republicans lost 40 seats in 2018, as well as control of Congress. The day after those midterm elections, Bush and Obama and Biden said they accepted the will of voters and adjusted their agendas accordingly. But we are no longer living in those days, as we have a president who continues to spread the lie that he won the 2020 election. So rather than face losing the House next year, the president is scrambling. He's talking about doing a new census this year and changing the rules of how people are counted so that it would favor red states. He reached out to Texas and asked them to redraw their congressional maps. J.D. Vance went to Indiana earlier this month to pressure the governor there to redraw their maps, hoping to eliminate the 2 Democratic members of Congress from that state. And so it is against this backdrop that Florida House Speaker Danny Perez announced last week he was forming a legislative committee to start work on redistricting. And Governor Ron DeSantis said he doesn't really care what the House Speaker is doing. He will work on his own plan to redraw the maps this year.
You know, we believe there's defects in the current map. We also believe that the districts are malapportioned because of the explosive growth that we've seen in the state of Florida. And so I think even if they don't do a new census, even if they don't revise the current census, I still think it is appropriate to be doing it. So, I'm going to be working with folks in the legislature, but it'll be something that I think you can anticipate there'll be, good debate over.
Here's the problem. It would be absolute chaos if you just started redrawing congressional maps every couple of years because somebody moved from one part of the state to another. Democrats, and even some Republicans I've spoken to, don't believe DeSantis' argument and believe his true motives are absolutely clear. Here is Democratic Congressman Darren Soto, who represents the Orlando area. What's your reaction to the notion of doing this redistricting?
It's wholly partisan and violates the Florida Constitution. As you know, under the fair districts, you can't draw a map to favor one party or another. Look, voters need to see this for what it is. It's attempting to cheat, to change the game before midterm, where Republicans will probably take a shellacking because the economy is getting worse. They're deporting millions of our family members, especially in the Hispanic community, and the president's numbers are way low. And so voters, they got to ask themselves, how much more angry are we going to get at all these actions if they try to cheat the game on top of it? And it could end up backfiring in that you have a bunch of seats that are more competitive. And with the right swing, you could end up increasing the number of Democrats from Florida going to the Congress next term.
I'm hearing that they are looking to perhaps take out 4, if not 5, of the 8 Democratic members of Congress, including yourself.
I welcome competitive general elections. But we've already been gerrymandered quite a bit. They would have to throw out the entire fair district amendments to have any ability to do that. In South Florida, though, I'm more worried because it's more compact, a bunch of people in a small area, but it also could all explode like a powder keg because I've seen South Florida seats swing 16, 17 points between elections. It's more volatile down there than I do, Jim, but this could backfire on them down there, too.
You heard several times Soto refer to fair districts in the state constitution. I think it's important we understand exactly what fair districts is and why it's important. In 2010, Florida voters passed a constitutional amendment known as fair districts. It received 63% of the vote, and it laid out the rules for how congressional maps should be drawn. And here's the way it now appears in the state constitution. No apportionment plan or individual district shall be drawn with the intent to favor or disfavor a political party or an incumbent. Now it goes on to talk about how districts should be compact and follow natural city and county borders whenever possible. It also says maps should not be drawn to diminish minority rights. But when it comes to redrawing lines to help one political party and hurt another, the Constitution and the voters are clear. You can't do it. And yet DeSantis is moving ahead anyway. Democratic State Senator Chevron Jones told me he isn't surprised.
The governor and his administration look at the state constitution, or the Constitution in general, as a suggestion. They don't follow it, and they do it for this very reason, to try the courts and push this type of stuff to the courts because they know they'll win. They don't give a damn about what the people of Florida voted for. And to be honest with you, they could absolutely care less, and that's why they're doing this, what they're doing.
Passing the Fair Districts constitutional amendment was a major achievement for voters in Florida, and we tend to forget these fights. So I wanted to talk about the significance of the amendment with one of the attorneys who helped pass it and then defend it in court. Dan Gelber is the former mayor of Miami Beach and was the minority leader in the Florida House.
In the Fair District amendments, which passed in 2010 with 63% of the vote of the electorate, which is, by the way, more than Governor DeSantis or any of the cabinet officials got, so it was more popular than almost anything else, has a simple concept, which is, people should pick their congressmen, and their congressmen shouldn't be picking their voters. And it outlawed gerrymandering that favors or disfavors a political party, and had all these other rules that made sense, like make your districts compact, make them follow municipal and city lines, so people with the same interests are represented by the same person. And so it was really a thoughtful thing, and it was overwhelmingly popular, and in fact is still overwhelmingly popular with not just Democrats, but Republicans and independents. Everybody believes that voters should pick their representatives, not the other way around.
This is one of the key differences between Florida and, let's say, Texas. We see in Texas this taking place right now, but the reason why Governor Abbott in Texas can get away with outright saying, no, we're going to take Democratic seats away and elect more Republicans, is because there's nothing in the Texas state constitution that prevents it. Florida has it in their state constitution. Is that the main difference between the two instances?
Precisely the main difference. The U.S. Supreme Court has not outlawed partisan gerrymandering. It hasn't made it a right either. But Florida's constitution, which is its seminal document, has said you cannot do this. You cannot draw districts that are favoring or disfavoring a political party. You've got to follow all those other guidelines, whether it's contiguous, whether it's compact, whether it follows municipal lines, things like that. And that's what Florida's constitution says, and that's what the voters expect people to do. Although it appears that possibly in Florida that some folks in Tallahassee are going to decide that they want to just forget about what the people wanted and what's in the Constitution and do what they think they can get away with.
One of the things that I think is fascinating is that even with fair districts, you see the state of Florida, which has 28 members of Congress, 20 of which are Republican. And even the redistricting that they did just a couple of years ago favored Republicans more and more. Now, granted, Donald Trump won the state, by a fairly sizable margin, but not that would suggest that the state is so divided that it would be 20 Republicans and 8 Democrats, let alone if Ron DeSantis gets his way, he'd want to take it to maybe 24 Republicans and only 4 Democrats left in the state of Florida. It just seems as if even fair districts hasn't protected voters in the meaningful way that we intended.
That's a great point, Jim. A recent study indicated that other than Texas, Florida is the most politically gerrymandered state in the nation. And it is. But the reason it is because the last map that the Florida Supreme Court approved from Governor DeSantis, it was not challenged based on partisan gerrymandering. It was not challenged on partisan gerrymandering. It was challenged because the folks that were suing believed that the minority districts were being diminished, and therefore that was what they made their case about. And the U.S. Supreme Court has said that under the many have argued that the Equal Protection Clause doesn't allow that anymore, and that's what the justices of the Florida Supreme Court said. So the reason why Florida is so overwhelmingly skewed right now is because there is partisan gerrymandering, and it hasn't been challenged in the Supreme Court. And right now, it's about to be, potentially even more gerrymandered. And I hope that it is challenged in the Supreme Court, and that the Florida Supreme Court does its job and animates and empowers those amendments, because that is what the people of Florida wanted.
I don't want to get too deeply in the legal weeds here, but essentially the Florida Supreme Court and then the U.S. Supreme Court said that protecting minority districts, which was essentially what they were trying to do by drawing under fair districts, protecting minority district, the rights of minorities, is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. So the state Supreme Court and then the U.S. Supreme Court held that. Is there any similar such protection in the federal Constitution for political gerrymandering? Is it a right to be able to politically gerrymander a district? Could the state constitution in Florida on this issue on political gerrymandering be struck down just as the racial discrimination part was?
While the U.S. Supreme Court has lurched far to the right and has refused to say that political gerrymandering is improper, they have not said that it's a right and that you have a right to do it. And in fact, they have said that the states should govern that. And Florida is a state that has governed it through the Fair District Amendment. 63% of voters, through the citizen initiative process, put it in the Constitution. The first line of Florida's Constitution says all political power is inherent in the people. And the people spoke and said that. So Florida has a clear set of rules.
This is obviously an issue we will be following closely. Now, when we come back, there are new and stunning revelations in the Hope Florida scandal. Stay with us.